Hi, I'm Sarah. This is Hardcover Hearts, and I'm here with my week of reading wrap-up where I talk about the books that I read, what I'm currently reading, and potentially could read next. I've read a collection of books lately that seem to be in conversation with each other, and I can't even tell you the joy I feel when that happens. I feel like it's a special prize for really, really, really dedicated hardcore readers. So I want to talk about some of these books. And the first one I want to talk about is something that I did on audio. Now this book could be the second. It's the second book from this author that I've heard about. The first one was Sudden Death, and the author is Álvaro Enrigue. Now, I wasn't as interested in Sudden Death because it was about a tennis match in historical times, and I don't care about tennis. It sounded kind of wacky and out there, experimental, and for some reason it just didn't capture me. But this one did. The book I'm talking about is You Dreamed of Empires, and this is translated by Natasha Wimmer. And I did the audio of this one, and it was narrated by Gabriel Porras. What to say about this book? Okay, this book is a wild ride. It's irreverent. It's funny. It's terrifying. It's disconcerting. It's a little existential. It's a little travel log. It's historical. It just encompasses so much that I was completely entranced by this book. So it's set in 1519, and we have the meeting of really two dominant forces coming together in this palace. So in Tenochtitlan is where Mexico City sits today. And it was this labyrinth-like palace that was, this monument to the gods. And this is where I've always heard his name pronounced Montezuma, but in the book it's Moctezuma, is reigning. And it's a chaotic reign. Or he's at least in a place of his life where things are not going very well. He's in an existential crisis. He's sitting around doing hallucinogens all day long. He's married his sister and forced her to reign next to him when she just wants to do her own thing. She was quite happy just being the princess and having her bevy of lovers. She never wanted to get married, and now she has to marry her brother. So it's a thing. She's not pleased. So they're at their palace, and they have to welcome Cortez, Hernan Cortez, and his retinue and his conquering conquistador armies, including a strategist and one of the really smart strategic minds and linguistic geniuses. And her name just so happens to be Maninali. And she is brilliant. So you've got these two kind of very, very powerful, difficult, obnoxious men bringing all sorts of masculine bravado and toxic warlike behavior, self-reverence, and just this feeling that both of them are there for a reason and are not to be questioned. So we have those forces that are clashing, and then we have these women along the side that are watching this. So it's quite amusing and funny in some cases, quite bloody and terrifying in others. But the detail with which he writes, there's no heroes in this story. There's no sense, it's definitely a question of colonialism and everything that we know that's going to happen from this point. But in this moment in time, it's just this very awkward meeting of these two cultures that are so completely at odds and not in any way, shape, or form likely to align. I found this funny, terrifying, bizarre, informative. And I have to be honest, I am really looking forward to getting this in print so I can go back and read it, because it was so out there. And I know that even in listening to it, I didn't capture everything, but it was great to kind of be placed in and kind of taking all of this in as the story was being narrated. It did a really great job at talking about this labyrinth of a palace and some of the ceremonial rooms, and really putting you there. You could tell that he did a tremendous amount of research in writing this. So yeah, I don't know if this is going to make me want to go back and read Sudden Death. Well, it's made me curious. I don't know if I will. So I would love to know, have you read this book? And have you read Sudden Death? Should I go back and read Sudden Death? And the reason I was interested in this was on the long list for the Booker International Prize. And now I'm thinking, if this didn't make the short list, there better be some heavy hitters there, because I found this to be completely unique. A very singular reading experience. I guess I should say it that way. So let's talk about another reading experience or listening experience. I chose to do this next one on audio because it was narrated by the author. And I do find if the author is doing their own narration, sometimes that can just add so much more depth and so much more interest in the book itself. But you really need a strong narrator. In this case, I think the narration was either too strong or the person kind of bought their own hype. And the book is Sociopath by Patric Gagne. And I think that's how you pronounce the last name. Also a wild ride here. But what's so interesting about this book is the narrator or the writer very clearly is talking about her own life. So she is diagnosed as a sociopath. What drew me to the book and made me think that this would be a good one to read is that I expected there to be a foundation of study, of research on sociopathy. And so I wanted to have that grounding, but then also hear the anecdotal from the author. And what I found is there was a lot of the anecdotal and very light on actual research. And I'm not sure I buy the reason why. The author at the very beginning will tell you that she is by nature a liar. And has no qualms, no issues whatsoever, no guilt. That's one of the main factors in a sociopath, is no connection to the sense of shame or guilt for anything. So when she throws that out very, very early on in the book, and you hear some of the, is it self-satisfaction, the glee, maybe some of the smugness in how she tells her story and how interesting she finds herself and how unique the situation is. I did find myself on more than one occasion wondering how far we should believe this tale. This is the ultimate unreliable narrator because this person is completely not beholden to anything, any reason to tell the truth. It felt that many of her stories were a little bit of defensiveness, as opposed to this is how a sociopath would do things, handle this situation. But a lot of personalization that then was extrapolated into this is what a sociopath does. So I found that to be not really convincing. I don't know a lot about this. I haven't studied, albeit I have not studied psychology very deeply. So I wasn't sure. And I also ended up wondering, was a lot of my apprehension or discomfort with this book because the author was reading it herself. Was it the spin she was putting on it and what I heard in her voice? Very actor-like, very manipulating. I felt very manipulated as a listener reader. But I wonder if I would have had the same experience if I'd read the text itself. So I'm not sure. But for me, the conclusion was that was not a book for me. I didn't really get what I was looking for from it, and like I said, felt pretty manipulated as an author to drive to a conclusion about this person as a person, as a character in the story, rather than understanding better what sociopaths go through. But I would love to know, have you read this? What were your thoughts? Dying to talk to other people who have read this. This next one was talked about as potentially being on the Women's Prize long list. And I don't think it was, if I remember correctly. Or maybe it was. I'll have to go back and look. Sorry. My brain is fried from work. But this is what drew me to it, is that I kept hearing about it in connection with the Women's Prize long list. It's called Dominoes, and it's by Phoebe McIntosh. In this book, we are supposed to be in contemporary London, and we meet Layla and her best friend, Sarah. And they're young women out of college and, in the workforce, and out for a night on the town. And she ends up going, Layla goes to a party that Sarah drags her to, and ends up meeting someone who becomes the love of her life. So Layla has met Andy. She's completely smitten with him. They have this very lovely romantic affair. There is class issues, and there are also racial issues. But the racial issues are a little subtler because she is biracial and has very, very light skin. Her friend Sarah is a Black woman, and Andy is a white man who comes, he's Scottish, and his family is kind of upper middle class, and that has some dynamics at play. At first, Sarah is really excited for Andy and Layla, but then she starts to sour on this relationship, and we're not really sure why. There's some of the things that Andy kind of flippantly says or innocently not thinking through that really just rub Sarah the wrong way. And Sarah has the sense of Layla as a Black woman. And so therefore she should reject wholeheartedly some of the things that Andy and his family say and do. Layla doesn't have the same feeling and is feeling pulled between Layla and Andy, and isn't really sure what to do because she loves them both very, very much. They're going to get married. Layla and Andy are engaged. They're going to get married, and Sarah is supposed to be one of the bridesmaids. This becomes an issue. They both have the same last name. Yeah, you may be thinking what I thought when I first heard that, which is, oh no, a white man and a Black woman with the same last name potentially could indicate that there were issues of slave ownership that connect the two of them in their history. And Sarah sends something to Layla that makes her question everything. And it's very clear that Sarah wants a specific outcome out of this. But Layla is open-hearted, and she's not sure what all of this means. What do facts from the past, potential facts from the past, have to do with where they are today and the people that they are today? And so it's a very complex story, a complex issue that was handled very simply through character, through story as we're kind of moving through the book. I I found it to be, it was a good read. I didn't feel that it tackled things very controversially. I think it was very, again, simply told. I found the most complex piece and the stuff that was most contentious were really the relationship between the two women. I found to be quite interesting, but it was all handled with kind of like a soft hands, kind of gloves and manners, and nothing too dramatic or antagonistic. There's no hard edges here. It's more kindness and leading with kindness and starting from a position of love. So I thought it was good. I can see why it didn't make the lists. And so yeah, glad I read it though. Next up was one that, man, what a disappointment. I really wanted to like this book so much. Kind of continuing off of the joy that I felt from You Dreamed of Empires, and also some other South American literature that I've been reading lately, especially by women. I got really excited when I saw this, which was on the Booker International long list. Did not make the short list. This was Undiscovered by Gabriel Weiner and translated by Julia Sanches. I was so hopeful about this one. This is kind of like autofiction. But I think this is where autofiction goes wrong. And it's interesting. So there's so many things at play here. A little bit of the colonizer issues and colonialism issues that we experienced with You Dreamed of Empires is at play here, because Gabrielle is in a museum in Paris and she's looking through these ancient pre-Columbian artifacts and sees her great-great-grandfather's name ascribed as the founder of Machu Picchu. And I guess she knew a little bit of this, but not very directly. Because her side of the family are the ones who remained in Colombia and are, they're not necessarily excited to connect their story with this man who apparently stole this was already something that was discovered by other people, and he kind of like swept in and claimed it first and kind of forced his name on a bunch of things. So there's a difficult relationship with this branch of the family, which I thought, okay, that could be interesting to explore, right? Then we get into her father is dying, and she goes back. She goes back to visit her family. She's been living in Madrid, and she's in a polyamorous marriage. So she's married to a man, but she's also is partnered with a white woman, a Spanish woman, and they are raising her son together, her child together, and they are in what seems to be a loving, very healthy, interesting, unique relationship. We have her coming back and spending time with her father because her father is dying, and trying to orient herself around her feelings toward her father because she was privy to her father's infidelities and her father's secret lives. She felt maybe that this kind of pulled her into polyamorism and kind of living more openly, not in a monogamous relationship, having seen what this did to her family. So all that's, fairly interesting, but it just went deeper and deeper and deeper into her own issues and her own problems and how she was trying to deal with reckoning all of these things together. And it was so self-satisfied. It was too much about herself that I didn't care about this character. She as a character of a fiction novel was wholly uninteresting, very self-centered, very claims to live by some principles and then ditching them when it was convenient. And it ended up feeling like there was no real ability to separate the author from the character, obviously. And the searching for herself was just insufferable. It did not work for me. It was tedious. And there wasn't the character established to care about her, right? We kind of are dumped in as she's an adult looking at this museum, at this placard. And then we go back, but not even far enough to really get a sense of who this person was. So I was very, very disappointed in this one. I thought it had so much potential and on paper had a lot of the things I should have loved, but in actuality, in practice, as it came across, did not work. So that's what I read. Let me talk about what I'm currently reading. I did just finish this, but I need to, this is already too long, so I'm going to have to talk about this at another time. This is a love story by Émile Zola. This is the 8th of the Rougon-Macquart series. This is translated by Helen Constantine. I will talk about this. I promise to wrap this up soon. I also need to wrap up some of the Natalia Ginzburg books. We have just finished the Natalia Ginzburg Author Spotlight series, and we're moving on to Elizabeth Bowen right now. I'll talk more about that in a second. So recently we finished Family Lexicon as well as Happiness as Such. So I need to do a full wrap up of Toni Morrison Author Spotlight series about Natalia Ginzburg series, and then I'm sure I'll have to do the same thing for Elizabeth Bowen. But we are, speaking of Elizabeth Bowen, we are starting The Hotel, which is her first novel. So she had written short stories and published them before going to a novel. So she's not coming at it with that freshness that a debut would have. You know, her legs feel very firm, like she's on steady ground and she knows what she's trying to accomplish. So that's exciting. We have our first check-in today and we are reading to the halfway part. So more on this later. Still reading and loving A Manual for Cleaning Women by Lucia Berlin. There has not been a single story in this that I haven't enjoyed to some degree, which is really saying something because I don't often get on with short stories. So this has just utterly been a delight. And there's things that are like literally in my neighborhood here in Berkeley, in Oakland, as well as Texas, New Mexico, and Mexico itself. So it's been really lovely to kind of dip into this. Then as I look forward to next week, there are a couple things that I want to read. I want to start this. This is a collection of essays, and this is The Long-Winded Lady by Maeve Brennan. And my understanding is that these were originally written for The New Yorker between 1954 and 1981. And these are kind of slices of life in New York City. My husband and I have a trip planned very soon. So I'm very excited to read this and kind of get into the spirit. Then because I'm no longer reading Natalia Ginzburg, I want to keep an Italian book in progress, Italian literature. And this is one that I had gotten, I think, on one of my recent travels. And I talked to my Italian teacher, and he said this would be a good one to start. And this is The Last Summer in the City by Gianfranco Galligarish. And this has a foreword by Andre Ackman, and it was translated by Howard Curtis. So excited to get into that. And, you know, I'm still reading French literature through the Rougon-Macquart series. So we only finished number 8 of a 20-part series. So we have plenty more to go. But as long as I'm always having an Italian book going, as well as a French book, I think I'm doing pretty well. So that's it. I would love, I'm also reading in my Kindle, The Wren. I'm just about to start by Enright for the Women's Prize shortlist. And yeah, I think that's about it. So I'd love to know, have you read any of these and what were your thoughts? And that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.